Chapter 698. The three overlords had been passed down for thousands of years. This also meant that these three clans once had divine ocean realm and true lake realm cultivators. They also possessed the secret to breaking through the shackles of the Cloud River realm. This was something that the other clans in the Soaring Dragon realm didn't possess. But even the cultivators of these three clans were getting worse and worse after the appearance of the Sky Gap. Li Sa of the Imperial Heavenly Sect had already reached the transformative realm more than 200 years ago, reaching the peak of the Cloud River tier. All these years, he had been comprehending the secrets of the true lake, not only for himself, but also for the cultivation world of the Soaring Dragon realm. However, in the end, his strength was still insufficient. Today, his lifespan had come to an end and he had passed away. Everyone couldn't help but sigh. When the news spread, all the major clans in the Soaring Dragon realm were shocked. Senior Li Sa is gone. That Master Fa Hua of the Diamond Temple probably won't live for long. Someone sighed. In terms of age, that Master Fa Hua was older than Li Sa. That master was someone who had truly witnessed the might of a true lake realm cultivator. When he was born, there were still true lake realm cultivators in the Soaring Dragon realm. The reason why he could live longer than Li Sa was mainly because the cultivation technique of the Diamond Temple focused on tempering the body. With vigorous blood and qi, one's lifespan would be longer. But thinking about it, he was about to reach his limit. The passing of such seniors wasn't just a temporary loss to the cultivation world. It also represented the loss of the Soaring Dragon realm's foundation. The Royal Heaven Sect had such a character, the Vajra Temple had such a character, and the Howran Academy also had such a character. As a cultivator, it was undoubtedly a sad thing to reach the end of the path because of the limitations of the world. If such changes continued in the Soaring Dragon realm, there might be no such thing as a group of cultivators in the future. To Senior Li Sa, someone stood up and held a wine cup. He bowed towards the direction of the Imperial Heavenly Sect and poured the wine on the ground. To Senior Li Sa, everyone followed suit. The atmosphere in the restaurant was heavy. Disregarding everything else, just sitting there for 200 years to find a way out for the cultivation world of the Soaring Dragon realm was enough to make people respect him. Even if he failed in the end, the heavy atmosphere didn't last long. Most of the cultivators were open-minded. With a voice, the dull restaurant became lively again. Everyone, have you heard? Half a month ago, the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa in the Feng province was destroyed. Yi Ying was killed, and the entire Yi clan was practically exterminated. Who did it? Someone asked. I'm not too sure about that, but I heard that it was done by the Divine Will sect. These two clans have a grudge against each other, so it's not surprising that the Divine Will sect would take action. It's just a pity that the Tyrant Saber technique is lost. I heard that it's an incredible saber technique. With the Yi clan gone, I'm afraid that the Tyrant Saber technique will no longer exist in this world. Lu Yi of Lu of Lu. Of Lu. But from the news, the world only knew that the Tyrant Saber Manor was destroyed. They didn't know that Yi Lu and Yi Lioli were still alive. They didn't even know that the Divine Will sect suffered a great loss at the hands of the Tyrant Saber Manor. Even their vice sect master, Pang Wanhai, and 2 elders were killed. This wasn't strange. The Tyrant Saber Manor wasn't the only enemy of the Divine Will sect. Since they suffered such a great loss, they naturally wouldn't spread the news. Lu Yi couldn't spread the news either. Therefore, these things were kept secret for the time being. The cultivators talked about all sorts of things. The topic changed very quickly. After all, most of the things they talked about weren't their personal experiences. They just treated it as a topic of conversation. After talking about the Tyrant Saber Manor, they talked about the strange phenomenon in the Feng province a few days ago. A divine weapon was born, causing countless cultivators to fight. Blood flowed like a river. It was said that even the Howran Academy was alerted. In the end, no one knew who obtained the divine weapon that appeared in the world. Then they talked about the heavenly gully in the far north. Some people saw a shadow rolling in the gully. The rumors about the heavenly gully hadn't stopped since 800 years ago in the Soaring Dragon realm. That was because the changes in the Soaring Dragon realm started with the inexplicable appearance of the heavenly gully. In 800 years, the upper limit of the cultivators went from the divine sea realm to the true lake realm, and then to the current cloud river. The spirituality of the whole world seemed to be constantly flowing away with the appearance of the heavenly gully. However, although the heavenly gully had appeared 800 years ago, it had always been in the sky of the far north. It hadn't changed much. This attracted countless cultivators to go and take a look. Because of this, a force called the Heavenly Gully Sect was born. The headquarters of the Heavenly Gully Sect was in the Snow Province, not far from the Heavenly Gully. The cultivators of the Heavenly Gully Sect all believed in one truth. The Heavenly Gully was a gift from heaven. Comprehending the mystery of the Heavenly Gully would allow the cultivators to find the path beyond the Cloud River. Most of the cultivators in the Soaring Dragon realm scoffed at this, but there were also many cultivators who had reached their limits who wanted to try and comprehend the mysteries of the Heavenly Gully. It was also because of this that the Heavenly Gully sect had a mix of good and bad people. However, it was undeniable that there were many masters in the sect. Many of them were old Ninth Order Cloud River realm cultivators. Some people even felt that the Heavenly Gully sect's current heritage wasn't inferior to the other three overlords. The cultivators in the restaurant were still talking loudly. Lu Yi had already paid for the food and wine. He took Yi and Yi Lioli out of the North City Gate, summoned the spirit boat, and continued north. In the air, a stream of light flashed quickly. It was a shuttle-shaped flying spirit artifact. A short man sat on top of it. His face was as pale as paper. Judging from the aura fluctuations on his body, he was a Ninth Order Cloud River realm cultivator. However, this person seemed to be seriously injured. His aura was extremely weak. As he flew, he would suddenly spit out a mouthful of blood. The flying spirit artifact also shook and almost fell from the sky. Damned woman! Damned woman! The man spat out the blood in his mouth and cursed through gritted teeth. He didn't expect that he would encounter such misfortune when he thought that it was a great opportunity. What kind of opportunity was that? It was simply a malicious spirit that came to take his life. There were several times when he wanted to throw away the thing he had obtained from the fire a few days ago because it was the cause of his current condition. However, every time he took it out and wanted to throw it away, he couldn't bear to. After all, although this thing was dangerous, he could feel the terrifying power it contained. It was definitely not a power that a Cloud River realm cultivator could unleash. It was indeed a rare treasure. How could he be willing to throw it away just like that? These days, he had searched for famous medical cultivators in the vicinity, but none of them could alleviate his injuries. Now, there was only one last hope left. Snow Province's Medicine Valley, the little fairy doctor. All the way north. The Imperial Heaven Sect. The atmosphere in the sect had been quiet for the past few days. Lisa's death was undoubtedly a big blow to the Imperial Heaven Sect. Cultivators were open-minded by nature. Life and death were common occurrences to them. They didn't have to wear mourning clothes because of one person's death. In fact, they didn't even have a grand funeral. Only some of the higher-ups of the Imperial Heaven Sect placed Lisa's body in a hidden place and buried her. The current sect master of the Imperial Heaven Sect, Huang Liang, had been busy with this matter for the past few days. He only finished today. Walking out of the tomb where Lisa's body was placed, Huang Liang said softly, "I'll set off now. I'll have to trouble you all to take care of the sect." Vice Sect Master Kui Yuanshan said, "Sect Master, let me go." The other elder-level cultivators also volunteered one after another. No one knew why Huang Liang wanted to take a look at Sky Ravine at this time. Huang Liang shook his head. "I'll only be at ease if I go personally." He didn't say much. When Lisa passed away, he was by her side. In terms of status, he was Lisa's personal disciple. At that time, Lisa already felt that her lifespan was coming to an end and prepared to say some last words. However, just as she was about to say her last words, she suddenly looked toward the north in a daze. Her eyes revealed a look of fear, and then she stopped breathing. Thinking back to the scene that day, Huang Liang faintly felt that at the last moment of her life, her master must have seen something. In the north, only an existence like Sky Ravine could attract her master's attention. Therefore, after taking care of Li Sa's funeral, Huang Liang decided to go to Sky Ravine to take a look. He wanted to know what her master saw before she passed away. As he said this, he had already summoned his spirit tool and soared into the sky. In the Diamond Temple, the sound of chanting sutras accompanied by the crisp sound of a wooden fish rang out. As a great sect with a legacy of thousands of years, the atmosphere in the Diamond Temple was undoubtedly solemn. In the deepest forbidden area of the Diamond Temple, a young novice monk was sweeping the fallen leaves on the ground. Suddenly he sensed something and looked up. What he saw gave him a fright. He did not know when a thin figure appeared in front of him. The figure was so thin that it was as if she was only skin and bones. Her face was covered in layers of wrinkles and dark spots. Only a pair of eyes were as bright as the stars. The figure appeared out of nowhere and stood in front of the young novice monk. She quietly looked toward the north and frowned. The two snow-white eyebrows beside her eyebrows trembled. Grand Master? The young novice monk finally recognized the figure and hurriedly bowed. This person was Monk Fa Hua, who had been sitting in the forbidden area of the Diamond Temple for 300 years. The young novice monk had never seen him before, but who else would dare to appear in the forbidden area at this time other than the Grand Master? However, when the young novice monk raised his head again, the figure was gone. The thin and weak old man who appeared in front of him just now had already disappeared. He was reading a book. Did I see a ghost? The young novice monk was shocked and his face turned pale. He hurriedly threw away the broom in his hand and ran out, shouting, "It's a ghost! It's a ghost!" After a while, a group of monks rushed over after hearing the news. They were all burly and full of vitality. After a round of investigation, they confirmed that their Grand Master was gone. The group of monks was confused. None of them knew why their Grand Master came out of seclusion without a word and disappeared without a trace. Jing walked to Tang San's side and sat down cross-legged beside him. She nodded her head lightly. Tang San squinted his eyes and his body slowly floated up. He stood up on the heart of the heaven's flower. He took a deep breath and the aura in his body surged. The 9 bloodlines in his body had already reached a state of balance after the fusion. His body began to improve rapidly. On his forehead, the light pattern of the golden trident appeared again. At this moment, Tang San's aura began to transform. His divine sense and the imprint of the golden trident fused together. He sensed the aura of the golden trident and his eyes began to brighten. The sound of waves that sounded like chanting could be heard beside him. An intense light began to rise rapidly and a huge golden shadow appeared behind him. Tang San's eyes were like lightning as he stared at the sky. Instantly, a loud bang erupted from the heaven's flower. A huge golden light pillar soared into the sky and into the clouds. Not far away, the heavenly fox Great Demon Emperor felt a shocking will erupt. The entire hell garden trembled violently, and the flowers began to wither rapidly. All of the luck seemed to be gathering toward the golden light pillar. His expression changed drastically, but he did not dare to be negligent. With a shake of his body, he revealed his true form. He turned into a 9-tailed heavenly fox that was more than 100 meters long. Each of his tails was more than 300 meters long. His 9 tails covered the sky and blotted out the sun. He emitted a large amount of luck and injected it into the Hell Garden to stabilize the realm. The Hell Garden must not be destroyed. Otherwise, it would be a devastating disaster for the heavenly foxes. In the ancestral court, the heavenly fox sacred mountain. The golden light that had been restrained suddenly became intense again. Not only that, but the heavenly fox sacred mountain's body also emitted a white light. However, the white light seemed to be collapsing inward. A golden beam of light shot up into the sky without any warning, instantly soaring high into the sky. The rulers, who had just withstood another thunderbolt disaster, subconsciously scattered. In the next instant, the golden light pillar had already rushed into the thunderbolt clouds. The pitch-black tribulation cloud was instantly lit up and turned into a dark golden cloud. All the purple color disappeared at this moment and was replaced by a huge golden thunderbolt. It seemed to have filled the entire realm with fury. Chapter 699. In the deepest part of Howren Academy, in front of a thatched cottage, a man in a green robe was holding a scroll in one hand and a fishing rod in the other. There was Li Sa in the Imperial Heavenly Sect, Fa Hua in the Jianghu Temple, and Lu Tianyi in Howren Academy. The three of them could be said to be the oldest people in the entire Soaring Dragon realm. However, unlike Li Sa and Fa Hua who were old, Lu Tianyi looked like he was only about 40 years old at first glance. Compared to the other two, he was undoubtedly much younger. This was not because he was good at maintaining his appearance, but because of the difference in the way of cultivation. The way of cultivation in Howren Academy was particular about a little Howren Chi. He lived a more carefree life than the other two. His youthful mentality was reflected in his body, making it difficult for him to look old. Of course, this was also the reason why Lu Tianyi's attainments in the way of Howren were not low. This kind of attainment had nothing to do with his cultivation realm, but with his state of mind. The fishing float floating on the water suddenly sank. A dragging force came from the fishing rod in his hand, but Lu Tianyi did not move at all. He just looked up to the north. His original carefree attitude had disappeared and was replaced by seriousness and confusion. A breeze blew, and Lu Tianyi's figure had already disappeared. The fishing rod was also dragged into the water. On the horizon, a stream of light flew straight to the north. Almost at the same time, Lu Tianyi and Fa Hua of the Jianghu Temple felt something. Compared to Li Sa, who had already passed away, they were 3 days later. This was not because Li Sa's cultivation was higher, but because when people were about to die, they could see and feel things that others could not feel. The three of them were rankers who had lived the longest in the Soaring Dragon realm. All of them had inherited a part of the realm's destiny. They might not be able to improve their cultivation, but they could vaguely sense the changes in the Soaring Dragon realm. The seriously injured cultivators, Huang Liang of the Imperial Heavenly Sect, Fa Hua of the Jianghu Temple, Lu Tianyi, Lu Yi, and Yi Lioli of Howren Academy, were all heading north. The territory of the Soaring Dragon realm was actually not big. It was much smaller than the 9 states. In one day, Lu Yi took Yi Lioli and Yi out of Feng Province and into Jia Province. In another day, they had already passed Gan Province. If they continued forward, they would be in Snow Province. Although Snow Province was famous for its snow, it didn't snow all year round. It was just that it was located in the north, so the temperature was generally lower. However, the change in temperature did not affect the cultivators that much. What made Lu Yi feel at ease was that Yi Lioli's old illness showed no signs of acting up during these few days. But then again, Yi Lioli's illness didn't flare up very often. Sometimes, it would flare up once every few months, and sometimes it would flare up every few years. Therefore, there should be plenty of time. They rested in the wild at night and continued their journey at dawn. Finally, they arrived at the Snow Province. The medicine valley of the little fairy doctor was in the Snow Province. It was not far away. Based on Lu Ye's current speed, it would take at most 1 day to arrive. When they arrived in Snow Province, the ravine was already visible in the distance. When Lu Yi entered this realm, he had some information about the ravine in his mind. Therefore, he was somewhat interested in the ravine that suddenly appeared 800 years ago. According to the cultivators of the Soaring Dragon realm, the current difficult situation in the cultivation world began when the ravine appeared. The ravine lay there. It seemed to have no effect on the Soaring Dragon realm, but it seemed to have a subtle force that constantly lowered the upper limit of the cultivators in the entire world. Each generation was worse than the previous. Lu Yi couldn't figure out the reason behind this, but he could faintly feel that he would not be able to avoid this strange ravine on this trip to the secret realm of the Soaring Dragon realm. Looking up, he indeed saw a huge mark on the horizon. It was as if the sky had been torn apart. It also looked like a dark centipede crawling on the sky. The cracks around the ravine were like the limbs of the centipede. Lu Yi suddenly said, "Don't you think this ravine looks a little familiar?" How could Lu Yi not see it? He turned his head and glanced at Yi Lioli, who was sleeping in Yi's arms. A thoughtful look flashed across his eyes. The ravine that lay across the horizon was indeed familiar because its shape was exactly the same as the birthmark on Yi Lioli's back. Even the corresponding number and position of the centipede's limbs were exactly the same. It was just that one was incomparably huge, and the other was just a birthmark. Could there be such a coincidence in this world? If it was really a coincidence, then so be it. The key was that as they traveled north these few days, Yi Lioli's condition became increasingly worse. As a cultivator of the Cloud River realm, she gradually became addicted to sleep. She would sleep for most of the day. This was obviously not normal. Lu Yi only glanced at the birthmark on Yi Lioli's back, but with his eyesight and memory he naturally couldn't forget it. Was it really a coincidence? But if it wasn't a coincidence, what did the birthmark on Yi Lioli's back have to do with this ravine? Lu Yi couldn't understand. Although he hadn't been in the Soaring Dragon realm for long, he had a feeling that the entire Soaring Dragon realm was full of secrets, and there was a faint sense of crisis. This sense of crisis grew stronger as he continued to move forward. Suddenly, a fluctuation of spirit energy came from the side. Lu Yi turned his head to look and saw a stream of light moving around a large ship spirit artifact. From time to time, he would activate his spirit artifact to attack the ship, but he was blocked by the cultivators on the ship. The aura flowing around the stream of light was that of a Cloud River Realm 9th Order. However, this person seemed to be seriously injured as his aura was fluctuating. Therefore, even if the cultivators on the ship's spirit artifact were weaker than him, this person couldn't do anything for a while. However, he didn't retreat. Instead, he pretended to attack while shouting, "Bastards of the Heaven Ravine sect, how dare you commit such evil deeds? Just wait for your sect to be destroyed, cough cough cough." As he shouted, he vomited a large mouthful of blood as if he was about to die. The Heaven Ravine sect. Lu Yi recalled for a moment and had a vague impression of this force. It seemed to be a group of relatively stubborn cultivators whose purpose was to comprehend the mysteries of the Heaven Ravine. They always felt that the mysteries contained in the Heaven Ravine were the only way out for the cultivators of the Soaring Dragon realm. The entire Soaring Dragon realm didn't have a good impression of the Heaven Ravine sect. However, because the Heaven Ravine sect was full of masters, and they were only active within the Snow Province, it was very difficult for ordinary cultivators to come into contact with them. Unexpectedly, he met them here. Lu Yi wasn't willing to intervene in the battles between cultivators. After all, he didn't know who was right and who was wrong. If he rashly interfered, he would only cause trouble for himself. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly looked at the cabin of the ship. There was a window there, and it seemed to be the bottom of the ship. Through the window, he saw many figures gathered together. What surprised him was that these people were actually mortals who had never cultivated before. All of them looked desperate and frightened, and many of them seemed to be injured. The battles between cultivators rarely involved mortals. This was the case for both the Soaring Dragon realm and the 9 provinces. No matter what, cultivators started as mortals. If there were no mortals, where would cultivators come from? In the 9 provinces, there were a large number of mortals living in the territories of the various sects. Every sect had the responsibility to protect the mortals in their territories because the continuation of the sect's inheritance depended on selecting excellent disciples from these mortals. The large number of mortals in the cabin of the ship looked like they had been kidnapped. Otherwise, they wouldn't look so terrified. Lu Yi vaguely understood what had happened when he recalled the words of the 9th Order cultivator who was coughing up blood. This Heaven Ravine sect? What were they trying to do? Even a rabbit wouldn't eat the grass near its burrow. Their roots were in the Snow Province, but now they had kidnapped so many mortals. Were they not afraid that the news would spread and the 3 overlord sects would join forces to annihilate them? This kind of thing had happened in the Soaring Dragon realm before. There was once an evil sect that didn't care about the lives of mortals and wantonly massacred them. In the end, the 3 overlord sects took action and the vast evil sect was annihilated overnight. However, no matter what they were doing, it was obviously not a good thing. The 9th Order cultivator who was coughing up blood must have encountered this matter and wanted to intervene, but because of his serious injuries, he was unable to do so. "Stay here and don't move," Lu Yi instructed before rushing out of the spirit ship and heading in that direction. If it was just a battle between cultivators, he wouldn't be bothered to intervene, but since some mortals were involved, he couldn't just sit back and watch. Back then, he was also rescued from Evil Moon Valley by the cultivators of Grand Heaven Alliance. Step by step, he had reached where he was today. His speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he was within 3 kilometers of the battlefield. The cultivator who was coughing up blood seemed to have noticed him and turned his head to look at him. A vigilant look immediately appeared in his eyes. He was currently in a bad state, otherwise, he would have already broken through the defenses of the ship. Suddenly, someone appeared at this time. Who knew if this person was from Heaven Canyon Sect? After all, this was Heaven Canyon Sect's territory. Looking at Lu Ye's cultivation, he was only a 6th order Cloud River Realm cultivator, so there was nothing to be afraid of. While he was vigilant, Lu Ye arrived in front of him. What made him feel relieved was that Lu Ye didn't have any hostility. He just stood in the direction of the ship and stared at it. He's a friend, not an enemy. The cultivator immediately made a judgment and shouted, "Little brother, I don't know why Heaven Canyon Sect has kidnapped a large number of mortals. It seems that they want to send them to the north. Let's work together to break their turtle shell and rescue them first." But Lu Ye responded and pulled out the mountain ascending saber from his waist. He swung it forward fiercely. Seeing this, the 9th order cultivator said, "This spirit ship has a protective spirit array. Little brother, don't waste your strength. Let's work together." Before he could finish, Lu Ye had already swung his saber. Under this strike, the protective light curtain that enveloped the entire spirit ship shook violently. It was as if a stone had been thrown into a calm lake. Ripples spread out wildly. This scene startled the cultivator. He was a 9th order cultivator. Even if he couldn't use his full strength, it was impossible for him to be weaker than a 6th order cultivator. However, he hadn't caused such a big disturbance in his previous attacks. Moreover, in his opinion, Lu Ye's attack wasn't too powerful. It didn't make sense for it to have such an obvious effect. To be continued. Chapter 700. The only way to achieve twice the result with half the effort was to attack the nodes of the spirit array. However, the nodes of any spirit array were constantly changing according to the flow of spirit chi. Even for array cultivators, it was not easy to deduce the location of the nodes. It was even more difficult to deduce the nodes and attack at the same time. Is this saber-wielding brat really that lucky? Did he hit the nodes with just one slash? Just as this person was thinking this, Lu Ye slashed a second time. An even more violent movement was heard, and the protective light curtain above the spirit ship rippled even more violently. Even the spirit ship shook violently. The few Heaven Canyon Sect cultivators standing on the deck didn't put Lu Ye in their eyes. Although they didn't have any decent masters on this trip, they had a lot of people, 7 or 8 of them. What they were afraid of was the 9th order cultivator coughing blood. Even if he looked like he was about to die, who knew if he was real? Moreover, even if he was seriously injured, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Therefore, when faced with the provocation of this cultivator coughing blood, they just hid on the spirit ship and didn't dare to act rashly. Who would have thought that a 6th order cultivator would cause such a big disturbance in the spirit ship's protective spirit array? For a moment, the cultivators on the deck couldn't stand still. A fierce-looking male cultivator with a long scar on his face shouted, "Where did this brat come from? How dare you meddle in the affairs of my Heaven Canyon Sect in Snow Province? Leave immediately, or you will die without a burial place." Someone else also shouted, "We have already contacted the sect's elders. Just wait for your death." As soon as these words came out, Lu Ye didn't care, but the man coughing blood looked worried. He wasn't afraid, but worried that if they delayed for too long, the masters of Heaven Canyon Sect would arrive, and the abducted mortals wouldn't be able to be saved. He was more worried that Lu Ye would be afraid and leave. After all, in Snow Province, Heaven Canyon Sect was very famous, and no one dared to provoke them. Turning his head, he saw that Lu Ye had already slashed a 3rd time. There seemed to be a shattering sound in the depths of their hearts, and a crack appeared on the spirit ship's protective spirit array. The cultivators of the Heavenly Gorge sect who had been yelling incessantly were terrified by this scene and their expressions all changed. On the contrary, the man coughing up blood couldn't help but clap his hands and laugh. Good. At this point, how could he not see that Lu Yi wasn't just lucky? Instead, he had really seen through the nodes of the array, and every slash of his blade had landed on the nodes. This person must be an extremely brilliant array cultivator. Otherwise, there was no reason for him to have such ability. However, he racked his brains and compared the famous array cultivators in his mind with the person in front of him, but he could not find any similarities. He could not understand when such a person had appeared in the soaring dragon realm. His cultivation was not high, but his array skills were ridiculously high. Seeing that Lu Yi was about to unleash his fourth strike, the scarred man on the spirit ship gnashed his teeth and shouted, "Brat, you're really courting death." As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed towards Lu Yi. The protective spirit formation only protected the outside but not the inside. He could kill his way out. Seeing how powerful Lu Yi's methods were, he could no longer sit still and was prepared to kill Lu Yi before retreating. His confidence came from his seventh-order cultivation. Not good. The cultivator coughing up blood was thinking about Lu Yi's identity, but he did not expect Heaven Canyon sect to respond in such a way. His figure flickered and he was about to rush over to help, but he was already seriously injured. The sudden attack made him feel like his whole body was about to fall apart. His vision darkened and he almost fell from the sky. When he came back to his senses and looked again, he found it unbelievable. That was because the boy with the saber was still standing alone in front of the spirit ship. Not far in front of him, blood splattered as a head flew off and a headless corpse fell from the sky. Huh? What happened? The man coughing up blood thought that Lu Yi would be defeated, but he never expected that Lu Yi would kill the scarred cultivator just because his vision darkened. How did he do it? He did not see the scene of Lu Yi killing the enemy, but the Heaven Canyon sect cultivators saw it clearly. One slash. With just one slash, the scarred man, who was the strongest among them, was decapitated. This scene deeply shocked them because even a Cloud River Realm 9th Order cultivator would not be able to do it so cleanly. They were really unlucky. They had been sent out to carry out such a mission. It was fine that they encountered the 9th Order cultivator coughing up blood. That cultivator was strong on the outside but weak on the inside, so there was nothing to be afraid of. But who was this boy with the saber? The saber flashed and slashed down again. Kata. Spiderweb-like cracks instantly appeared on the light curtain of the protective array. Then, with a crash, it shattered. The Heaven Canyon sect disciples protected by the array were instantly exposed to the saber. The man coughing up blood flew over, and Lu Yi also attacked with his saber. How could the Heaven Canyon sect cultivators resist the joint attack of the two? They were all killed in a moment. The man coughing up blood sat on the deck with blood flowing from the corner of his mouth, but he still looked up at Lu Yi with a look of approval. "Little brother, you did well. How should I address you?" Lu Yi cupped his fists. "Feng Province Yi Lu." "Little brother Yi." The man coughing up blood nodded slightly and saluted back with difficulty. "Qi Province, Jianghu Fan." As he introduced himself, he glanced at Lu Yi's expression, but he saw that Lu Yi's expression was calm, as if he had never heard of this name before. Jianghu Fan immediately concluded that this little brat was a greenhorn. Otherwise, it was impossible for him not to have heard of his name. Thief God Jianghu Fan was a famous figure in the entire soaring dragon realm. Anyone with a bit of knowledge would have heard of him. "Brother Yi, there is one more thing I must trouble you with," Jianghu Fan said softly. Lu Yi understood. "Do you want me to release those mortals?" He had some respect for this Jianghu Fan. Jianghu Fan was already seriously injured, but when he saw the mortals suffering, he still jumped out to stop them. It was obvious that he was a kind person. Jianghu Fan nodded. "Indeed. A small matter." Saying so, Lu Yi walked into the cabin and found the central spirit array that controlled the spirit ship. A moment later, under his control, the spirit ship floated to the ground. While he was busy here, Jianghu Fan had already walked into the hold and released the mortals who had been captured. At the same time, he also inquired about some information from them. The results of his inquiry made Jianghu Fan's heart heavy. Go, leave this place, leave the snow province, go live somewhere else. On the deck, Jianghu Fan waved to the mortals who were kowtowing to him. There were more than 400 people released, among them were some young people. Although they had lost their homes, as long as they supported each other, they could still leave the snow province. If possible, Jianghu Fan would be more willing to send them out of the snow province, but if he really did so, it would only bring disaster to them. Watching a large group of old and young people leave, Jianghu Fan turned his head to look at Lu Yi. Brother Yi, farewell. Lu Yi nodded slightly. After a while, Jianghu Fan was stunned. Why are you still here? Lu Yi said, Brother Zhuang, why are you still here? Jianghu Fan coughed a few times. My injuries are serious, I need to take a breather before I leave. Lu Yi couldn't help but laugh. He felt that this person was a little funny. He shook his head slightly, jumped off the deck, and began to set up spirit arrays around. Jianghu Fan poked his head out from the deck and asked curiously, Brother Yi, what are you doing? Lu Yi didn't even raise his head. Brother Zhuang's injuries are not light, it's best for you to recuperate. Otherwise, you'll die first before dying at the hands of the enemy. Jianghu Fan's expression became solemn. Since little brother has noticed, you shouldn't stay here any longer. The elders of Heaven Canyon sect are definitely ninth order, you are not their opponent. Saying so, he looked up towards the place where Yi and Yi Lioli were standing. There are still people waiting for you over there, don't make them sad. So, I'm setting up a spirit array. Jianghu Fan was speechless for a while. Although he had inferred that Lu Ye's attainments in the spirit array Dao were not low, in the end, it was only an inference. He had never seen Lu Ye's methods with his own eyes, so he didn't know what Lu Ye's attainments in the spirit array Dao were. However, Lu Ye's calmness at this moment gave him some confidence. Perhaps things aren't as bad as I thought? Thinking of this, Jianghu Fan said, I have already sent a message to a few friends about the evil deeds committed by Heaven Canyon sect. They will find a way to contact the Imperial Heaven sect, Vajra Temple, and Howard Academy. I believe that in a few days, the three great sects will take action. So, as long as we can stop the pursuers, those mortals will have a chance to escape. Brother Yi, tell me, how confident are you? The reason why he didn't personally escort those mortals out of Snow Province was that the dead Heaven Canyon sect cultivators had already sent a message to a certain Heaven Canyon sect elder, and the pursuers could arrive at any time. Since the elder was a ninth order cultivator, he would definitely be a ninth order cultivator. When the battle broke out, countless mortals would be killed or injured even if they hid in the cabin. However, he couldn't leave just like that, or the people he rescued would soon be captured. He didn't tell Lu Yi about this and planned to stay here alone to stop the pursuers of Heaven Canyon sect. Since he was already involved in this matter, there was no reason to give up halfway. But he didn't expect that Lu Yi would see through his thoughts even though he didn't say anything. What a warm-hearted young man. Jianghu Fan didn't want to implicate Lu Yi even more. If I say 100%, would Brother Zhuang believe me? Lu Yi asked while setting up the spirit array. Jianghu Fan fell back to the deck and leaned against the wall of the ship. He took out a bottle of wine and took a sip before laughing, I believe you. Lu Yi didn't need to set up a spirit array to deal with a ninth order cultivator, but under the premise of not knowing how many enemies there would be, setting up a spirit array was undoubtedly the safest way. When the time came, even if a few dozen people from Heaven Canyon sect fell into the spirit array, Lu Yi would be able to kill them all. In just over an hour, the spirit array had been set up. Lu Yi flew to the deck, and Yi had already brought Yi Lioli over under his orders. Jianghu Fan looked at Lu Yi, then at Yi and Yi Lioli. Obviously, he misunderstood something and sighed, it's good to be young. He took another sip of wine. The era that belonged to him had passed. Fortunately, there would be new talents in every generation, each leading the way for hundreds of years. Unfortunately, I won't be able to see it. To be continued. Chapter 701. Half an hour later, Jianghu Fan, who was taking a nap on the deck, suddenly opened his eyes and looked in a certain direction. He shouted in a low voice, he's here. At the same time, Lu Yi, who was standing not far away from him, also saw a stream of light flying over from the horizon. There was only one stream of light, but judging from its speed and aura fluctuations, it was a Cloud River Ninth Order cultivator. Moreover, the aura it exuded was much stronger than an ordinary Cloud River Ninth Order cultivator. Jianghu Fan focused his vision and his expression turned solemn. It's Sun Qi. This Sun Qi was born in Gan Province's 100 Battles sect. His talent was extraordinary, but his appearance was ugly. When he was young, he loved his junior sister but failed. More than 30 years ago, on the day of his junior sister's wedding, he killed the groom and humiliated the bride, betraying the sect. 20 years ago, he reached the Ninth Order Cloud River realm and brazenly returned to Gan Province to destroy the 100 Battles sect. However, his first impression was that Lu Yi was just a fledgling who was providing him with information about the enemy. Strictly speaking, the Heavenly Gorge sect was actually an evil sect. There were all sorts of people in this sect, and they hid and tolerated evil. There were traitors who had betrayed the sect, villains who had committed all sorts of evil deeds, and people who had offended experts and were driven into a corner. However, for so many years, the Heavenly Gorge sect had only been entrenched in the Snow Province and showed no signs of expansion. Moreover, the cultivators of the sect basically did not leave the Snow Province. Therefore, even the three overlord sects did not want to start a war with them. This Sun Qi had cultivated to the Ninth Order Cloud River realm 20 years ago, so after 20 years of accumulation, such a character must be extremely strong. Even if Lu Yi wasn't injured, it was impossible for him to be Sun Qi's opponent. Yang Kai didn't know if Lu Yi had the confidence to defeat him. However, when he thought of how busy this little brother named Sixth Yi was in setting up the spirit array and looked at his calm expression, Jianghu Fan calmed down a lot. Just as these thoughts were surging in his mind, a man with an ugly face and a figure that was as thin as firewood had already flashed over 100 meters away. He did not come here on an artifact. Instead, he flew here directly. Since he had rushed here so quickly, he must be nearby. As soon as he arrived, he saw the spirit ship docked on the deck and the bloodstains on the deck. Then he looked inside the ship, but there was no aura of any living beings. His expression darkened. So, you're the ones who killed the cultivators of the Heavenly Gorge Church? Lu Yi did not speak, but Jianghu Fan, who was at the side, cried out weakly, I killed him. Sun Qi glanced at him and snorted, a stray dog dares to clamor. He didn't know why Jianghu Fan looked so heavily injured, but among the people present, Jianghu Fan's cultivation was the highest. With such injuries, he could easily kill him. As for Lu Yi and the others, he didn't care about them at all. However, when his gaze swept past Yi and Yilioli, his eyes lit up slightly. He broke into a savage grin. Not bad, there's an unexpected gain. He felt uncomfortable from his smile and couldn't help but lean closer to Lu Yi and whisper, this person is so ugly. Like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, Sun Qi flew into a rage. What did you say? Among cultivators, there were very few who cared about their appearance. The higher the cultivation, the more this was the case. But then again, cultivators, regardless of whether they were men or women, would not be too ugly. This was because as their cultivation increased, their spiritual power would nourish their physical bodies. Men would become more dignified, while women would have delicate skin and maintain their youthful looks. He had seen thousands of cultivators with Lu Yi, but this was the first time she had seen someone as ugly as Sun Qi. At first glance, this person looked like a toad's head on a bamboo pole. He was so ugly that it was as if the sky was the limit. However, Sun Qi cared about his appearance the most. He was extremely talented. Back then, he was quite favored by his master in the sect. However, because of his natural ugliness, even his beloved junior sister was betrothed to someone else by his master. Therefore, he killed the man who was going to marry his junior sister and got her in his own way. 10 years later, when his cultivation had reached a high level, he returned to the sect and destroyed it in a battle. He made a name for himself. After that, he was chased by the great monks of the Jianghu temple for 3 months. He was forced to flee to the Snow Province and join the Heavenly Gorge sect. This time, he came here with a heavy responsibility, but he didn't expect his good fortune to be ruined. Someone even said he was ugly in front of him? How could he tolerate this? He hid behind Lu Yi and made a face at him. Ugly people are always mischievous. I'll kill you. Sun Qi roared, and his whole face became ferocious. The spiritual power around him surged, and he rushed toward the spirit ship. Be careful! Zhuang Bufan shouted in a low voice. However, at this moment he had no room to make a move, so he could only remind him in a low voice. Just as Sun Qi was about to move, a formation flag appeared in Lu Ye's hand and he waved it gently. Sun Qi, who was rushing toward Yi with his teeth bared and claws bared, suddenly looked stunned. Then, his whole body seemed to be pressed down by a mountain, and his body fell down uncontrollably. He reacted quickly and immediately understood what had happened to him. A forbidden sky array? It was creepy. How could there be a forbidden sky array in this damned place? It should be known that in the entire Soaring Dragon realm, only a few array masters were qualified to set up a forbidden sky array, and it would take a lot of time. If there was a forbidden sky array here, didn't that mean that one of those people had made a move? And which of those array masters did not have a powerful backer behind them? If one of them made a move, it naturally meant that their backer had also made a move. While his mind was racing, Sun Qi's body fell to a position only 10 meters above the ground, and the huge pressure on his shoulders suddenly disappeared without a trace. Before he could catch his breath, Lu Yi waved the formation flag in his hand again, and in an instant, the fog rolled over and shrouded his body. Lu Yi stepped out from the deck, his expression relaxed as he walked into the mist. Zhuang Bufan leaned against the wall of the ship with difficulty and poked his head out to look. All he could see was the fog surging in his field of vision, making it impossible to see the situation inside. Only the faint sounds of fighting and the fluctuations of spiritual power could be heard from inside, causing the fog to surge even more fiercely. A moment later, accompanied by a shrill scream, everything calmed down. Who won? Zhuang Bufan's heart skipped a beat. Immediately afterwards, he saw Lu Ye's figure walk out of the fog with a leisurely look on his face. Even his aura hadn't changed in the slightest. Looking at his posture, it didn't look like he had just fought with a Cloud River 9th Order cultivator, but rather had gone to a nearby river to catch a fish. Sun Qi, who even Zhuang Bufan was afraid of, was now like a dead fish in Lu Ye's hand, his body covered in wounds and his aura completely extinguished. Dead? Zhuang Bufan was shocked to the extreme. He died just like that? He almost wondered if he had recognized the wrong person. Perhaps that wasn't Sun Qi? Was it someone else? But besides Sun Qi, which other Cloud River 9th Order cultivator was so ugly? Moreover, whether he was Sun Qi or not, he was still a Cloud River 9th Order cultivator. He had actually died just like that. Thinking back to the spirit array Lu Yi had used before, Zhuang Bufan was shocked. A forbidden sky array, a bewildering array, a trapping array, and a few killing arrays. In just a short 2 hours, he was able to set up such an arrangement. Just how high was this little brother Yi Lu's attainments in the array Dao? As far as he knew, even the famous array masters in the Soaring Dragon realm wouldn't be able to arrange a forbidden sky array so easily. No wonder this little brother had been so calm from the beginning to the end, not putting the enemy in his eyes at all. Zhuang Bufan had thought that this little brother was just a newborn calf that wasn't afraid of a tiger, but now he knew that this little brother had confidence. Well done, Zhuang Bufan praised. In any case, the current crisis had been resolved. The Heavenly Gully sect had inexplicably lost Sun Qi, so they most likely wouldn't dare to act rashly in the near future. As such, the hundreds of mortals they had saved before would have a chance to escape. But thinking of the information he had obtained from the Heaven Ravine sect cultivators, Zhuang Bufan couldn't help but feel heavy. Because according to the information, Heaven Ravine sect had captured more than just this group of mortals. There were other groups that were abducting mortals from other places. Perhaps the entire Snow Province had been affected. He could intervene when he encountered this group of mortals, but he couldn't do anything about the others. He only hoped that the 3 major sects could react quickly and take action. Otherwise, the Snow Province would have many more deaths. Brother Zhuang, are you going to the Medicine Valley? Lu Yefei got on the deck and asked Zhuang Bufan. This wasn't difficult to guess. Zhuang Bufan's injuries and his appearance in the Snow Province meant that he was going to the Medicine Valley to seek treatment from the fairy doctor. Sure enough, Zhuang Bufan nodded and said, "I'm going to the Medicine Valley." "Brother Yi, are you?" He glanced at Yi Lioli, who had been unconscious since just now. "Then let's go together. I'll give you a ride." Lu Yefei nodded. Zhuang Bufan was overjoyed. "Then I'll have to trouble you, Brother Yi." In his current state, it would be troublesome for him to rush to the Medicine Valley. It would be best if he could get help. He sighed in his heart. Good people are rewarded. Little Brother Yi, whom he met by chance, was indeed a warm-hearted person. A moment later, two streams of light rose into the sky. Yi drove her flying spiritual weapon to carry Yi Lioli, while Lu Yefei carried Zhuang Bufan all the way to the Medicine Valley. Zhuang Bufan was undoubtedly more familiar with the terrain of the Snow Province. With him leading the way, it saved a lot of time. After all, Lu Yefei only knew that the Medicine Valley was in the Snow Province, but he didn't know the exact location of the Snow Province. While moving forward, Zhuang Bufan had been closing his eyes to rest and heal his injuries. Lu Yefei didn't say anything and just hurried on. After half a day, they arrived at the Medicine Valley. The Snow Province was located in the extreme north. Compared to other provinces, the environment was generally bitter and cold. However, the Medicine Valley was like spring all year round. Birds were singing and flowers were fragrant. Moreover, the spiritual qi here was extremely rich. There seemed to be an excellent spiritual vein underground. This was also the reason why the little fairy doctor had settled down here. She had been treating the injuries of the cultivators in the Soaring Dragon realm all year round and needed to consume a lot of medicinal herbs. Although some of the cultivators who came to seek treatment would offer free medicinal herbs, there were still some spiritual herbs that could not be bought outside. However, the Medicine Valley had everything. To be continued. Chapter 702. The Medicine Valley was located in a valley surrounded by mountains on three sides. Looking at it from the sky, Lu Yi could not help but think of Huitian Valley. In terms of scenery, Huitian Valley was one of the best in the entire Cloud River battlefield. However, the scenery in the Medicine Valley seemed to be more beautiful than Huitian Valley. The entire Medicine Valley was divided into medicine fields, where many spiritual flowers and herbs were planted. There were also medicine apprentices busily working in the fields. In the center of the Medicine Valley, there were more than 10 scattered thatched huts. Those were the residences of the Medicine Valley's owner and medicine apprentices. "Something's not right," Zhuang Bufan, who was behind Lu Yi, suddenly said. Lu Yi also noticed that something was wrong. At the entrance of the Medicine Valley, there seemed to be many cultivators confronting each other. It seemed that a battle had broken out. There were bloodstains on the ground and two corpses lying on the side. This scene surprised Zhuang Bufan greatly. This was because everyone who came to the Medicine Valley for treatment was either severely injured or suffering from some incurable disease. The fairy doctor also had an unwritten rule that no one was allowed to fight within the boundaries of the Medicine Valley. Anyone who broke this rule, no matter who it was, would not be treated by her. Therefore, for so many years, no one had ever dared to fight outside the Medicine Valley. Every cultivator who came here abided by the little fairy doctor's rule. Regardless of whether they were vicious bandits or evil cultivators, they could only restrain themselves when they came here. The Medicine Valley alone was not very powerful. Although the little fairy doctor's strength was not weak, she was alone. Few of her medicine apprentices had high cultivation. However, for so many years, many cultivators had been treated by her. Even in those top sects, there were many who were indebted to her for saving their lives. It could be said that the little fairy doctor's network of connections covered the entire dragon soaring realm. Therefore, even if the Medicine Valley was not a big force, no one dared to have any ideas about it over the years. Even the Heaven Canyon sect in the Snow Province turned a blind eye to the Medicine Valley and minded their own business. There were even cultivators from the Heaven Canyon sect who came to seek treatment from time to time. After all, as a cultivator who had not been injured, sometimes they could recover by taking some healing pills. If the healing pills did not work, They could only seek help from medical practitioners. There was no benefit in offending a medical practitioner. Not to mention the dragon-soaring realm, even the 9 states had some special treatment for medical cultivators. Even if the cultivators of the 2 camps captured the medical cultivators of the other side, they would not make things too difficult for them. They could even pay a certain amount of ransom to redeem the captured medical cultivators. Therefore, the confrontation between the cultivators outside the Medicine Valley was extremely inconceivable to Zhuang Bufan. Lu Yi did not know the fairy doctor's rules and was not surprised. If there was no conflict between cultivators, then they were not cultivators. Just as he was about to fly over, a cultivator shouted from afar, "The Heavenly Gorge sect is on business. Halt! Violators will be killed without mercy." It was the Heaven Gorge sect again. Zhuang Bufan frowned. For so many years, Tianhe sect had occupied the Snow Province and gathered a large number of cultivators. However, they had never left the Snow Province and only focused on comprehending the mysteries of Tianhe. However, the Heavenly Gorge sect had first abducted mortals, and now they had come to the Medicine Valley to stop people from seeking medical treatment. What on earth were they trying to do? Vaguely, Zhuang Bufan felt that the world was about to change. Unlike outsiders like Lu Yi, Zhuang Bufan was a native of the dragon-soaring realm. As a 9th-order cultivator, he was naturally more sensitive to the changes in the dragon-soaring realm than Lu Yi. There were many Heavenly Gorge sect cultivators blocking the way, about 30 to 40 of them. There were about a dozen cultivators confronting them, and most of them were injured. These cultivators were obviously here to seek medical treatment, but they were blocked by the Heavenly Gorge sect cultivators. This was the reason for the confrontation between the 2 sides. However, it seemed that some people were dissatisfied and wanted to force their way through, but they were killed by the Heavenly Gorge sect. Although the cultivators seeking medical treatment were filled with righteous indignation and felt that the Heavenly Gorge sect was overbearing, they did not dare to say anything. Lu Yi pressed down and landed outside the Medicine Valley with he and the others. Zhuang Bufan staggered slightly and sighed secretly. His face was full of worry. The Medicine Valley was blocked by the Heavenly Gorge sect. What should he do? He could not afford to delay his treatment with his current injuries. It was obviously irrational to force his way through. Although he dared to block the Heavenly Gorge sect's spirit ship before, that was a private matter. Now he was in public. If he offended the Heavenly Gorge sect, he would not be able to leave Snow Province even if the little fairy doctor could cure him. "We are here to seek help from the little fairy doctor. Why is your Heavenly Gorge sect blocking our way?" Someone shouted. "That's right. The Medicine Valley belongs to the little fairy doctor, not your Heavenly Gorge sect." Fellow Taoist, can you make an exception and let us enter the Medicine Valley for treatment? Fellow Taoist, don't worry. We won't delay your sex matters. Senior brother, what's wrong? Senior brother, don't die, the group of cultivators clamored, and the situation became chaotic. The leader of the Heavenly Gorge sect cultivators was dressed in black and had a cold expression. He was the one who had shouted for Lu Yi to stop when he saw him coming. This person had his hands behind his back and did not put the cultivators who came to seek medical treatment in his eyes. Dan said, "Those who dare to trespass will be killed without mercy." A young and aggressive cultivator was annoyed. "Your Heavenly Gorge sect is too unreasonable." As soon as he finished speaking, the older senior brother next to him covered his mouth. The black-clothed cultivator sneered, "Reason? This father is here to reason. If you want to reason with me, you have to win against this father first." He suddenly frowned and looked at Lu Yi, who was walking out from behind the crowd, and grinned. "What do you want?" "McWay." Lu Yi looked straight at him and kept walking. Zhuang Bufan broke out in a cold sweat. Only now did he realize that Lu Yi, who was beside him a moment ago, had walked out. This little brother was too bold. Previously, he could kill Sun Qi because of the power of the spirit array. Now, the Heavenly Gorge sect had the advantage in numbers, and the black-clothed cultivator was an 8th-order cultivator. How could he fight them head-on? He was secretly anxious, but he could only grit his teeth and keep up with Lu Yi. He made up his mind that if things went wrong, he would have to use his divine armament. Even if he would die after using it, he couldn't just stand by and watch such a warm-hearted little brother die here. Finally, another one who isn't afraid of death. The smile on the black-clothed cultivator's face became more and more ferocious. He raised his hand and grabbed a long spear from the storage bag at his waist. Pushing his spirit chi, the long spear bloomed and shot straight at Lu Yi. He shouted, "Die!" The sound of a sword rang out, and a dazzling light flashed. The black-clothed cultivator's face suddenly changed. He didn't put Lu Yi in his eyes. When Lu Yi flew over on his artifact, he secretly checked Lu Ye's cultivation. Lu Yi was only a 6th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. With his cultivation, he naturally didn't care too much. Originally, he wanted to kill this arrogant brat to shut up the noisy people around him, but as soon as Lu Yi took out his sword, he felt that something was wrong. An indescribable sense of oppression hit him head-on, making his skin tighten. Accompanying that sense of oppression was a powerful and aggressive aura. It was as if he was the one with the lower cultivation. With a few clanking sounds, the black-clothed cultivator screamed. The ferocious smile on his face had long disappeared and was replaced by deep shock. At this moment, in the huge collision, the web between his thumb and index finger had cracked and blood was flowing out. His aura and spirit chi were in chaos. He raised his long spear high and opened his eyes wide. In his vision, a sword light flashed, and his whole body froze in place. His eyes widened, and an expression of disbelief appeared on his face. In the silence, a small line of blood appeared on his neck. Then, blood spurted out and his head flew. Cries of surprise rang out. The cultivators of Heaven Canyon sect and those who came to the Medicine Valley for medical treatment were all dumbfounded. The collision between an 8th order and a 6th order cultivator was indeed a battle that could determine victory or defeat in a very short time, but the result was unexpected. The one who died was the black-clothed cultivator with a higher cultivation. How could this happen? Not to mention the cultivators who didn't know Lu Yi, even Jianghu Fan was in disbelief. He was originally worried that Lu Yi would suffer a loss at the hands of the black-clothed cultivator and was prepared to rescue him if the situation went wrong. Who would have thought that this little brother named Yi Lu would kill the black-clothed cultivator with just a few slashes? Am I dreaming? Previously, when Lu Yi set up a spirit array to kill Sun Qi, he only saw Lu Ye's terrifying attainments in the Tao of Arrays. Now, he saw Lu Ye's strength. He killed an 8th order cultivator so easily. In other words, this little brother could compete with a 9th order cultivator. Since ancient times, there had never been such a character in the soaring dragon realm. Which great master taught this disciple? While Jianghu Fan's thoughts were in turmoil, Lu Yi had already rushed towards the Heaven Canyon sect disciples. After saving the ship of mortals, Lu Yi had a very bad impression of Heaven Canyon sect cultivators. He also had a rough idea of what kind of people these cultivators were. Coupled with the fact that they were blocking his way, Lu Yi didn't hesitate to kill them. He couldn't be wrong to kill them. While Lu Yi was attacking, Eaton naturally didn't stay idle. Her spirit energy surged as she sent a series of spirit techniques into the crowd. "Kill them!" someone roared. Although they didn't want to offend Heaven Canyon sect, those who came to the Medicine Valley to seek medical treatment were all people who didn't have long to live. If they couldn't see the little fairy doctor, they would lose their lives. How could they still care about Heaven Canyon sect? They didn't dare to act rashly before. First, they were a sheet of loose sand. Second, their strength was indeed inferior. Some of them had already died at the hands of Heaven Canyon sect. They should learn from their mistakes. Now that Lu Yi had stepped forward, driven by their survival instincts, many cultivators obeyed. Before the Heaven Canyon sect cultivators could recover from the shock of the black-clothed cultivator's death, they were attacked head-on. Several more died in an instant. In addition, Lu Yi rushed into the crowd of enemies. Everywhere he went, blood rained down. The scene instantly turned into a mess. To be continued. Chapter 703. In the center of the Medicine Valley, there were a dozen scattered straw huts. These were the residences of the Medicine Valley's owner and the medicine apprentices. In the middle straw hut, a stalwart man with shoulder-length black hair and an unruly temperament was standing in front of a woman. He had an impatient look on his face as he said, "If I respect you, I call you the little fairy doctor. If I look down on you, so what if I flatten your Medicine Valley?" The leader of the Heaven Canyon sect's blockade of the Medicine Valley was naturally not the 8th Order cultivator who was killed by Lu Yi. Such a big matter was not something an 8th Order cultivator could handle. Therefore, the leader this time was the 9th Elder of the Heaven Canyon sect, Wuxia. There were many elders in the Heaven Canyon sect, and all of them were 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators. It was said that they were ranked in the top 50. The ranking of these elders was not fixed. The higher the ranking of the cultivators, the stronger they were. With dozens of elders, all of them were 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators. Who would feel that they were weaker than others? Therefore, the ranking of the elders in the Heaven Canyon sect would often change. However, the top 10 elders had never changed. The first elder to the 10th elder could be said to be the mainstay of the entire Heaven Canyon sect. They would not be mobilized for no reason. This time, for the little fairy doctor, Wuxia, who was ranked 9th, had personally come. It could be said that he had given them a lot of face. He wanted to invite the little fairy doctor back to the headquarters of the Heaven Canyon sect. In the past, the Heaven Canyon sect and the Medicine Valley had not interfered with each other because the little fairy doctor had too many connections. If they really offended the little fairy doctor, the Heaven Canyon sect would be in a terrible situation. But now, the sect was planning something big. Regardless of success or failure, the entire Heaven Canyon sect would stand on the opposite side of the soaring dragon cultivation world. When that time came, there would be many people coming to the Snow Province to encircle and annihilate them. When the war started, casualties were inevitable. If the little fairy doctor and her medicine apprentices were here, they could also heal the injured Heaven Canyon sect cultivators in time. In fact, whether the little fairy doctor agreed or not, he was going to take her away. As expected, the little fairy doctor did not agree to his request. This made Wuxia quite impatient. After a few words, he was already angry. A gentle voice sounded, "This is just a place for living people to treat illnesses. I am also a doctor. 9th Elder, why do you have to show off in front of me? Little fairy doctor, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. You should know what kind of person I, Wuxia, am. Since the sect leader sent me here to deal with this matter, you should know the consequences of rejecting me. Today, even if it's just your corpse, I will bring it back. Who doesn't experience life and death?" Even in the face of the suppressed anger of a Cloud River 9th Order cultivator, the little fairy doctor remained calm and collected, only minding her own business as she sorted out the herbs in front of her meticulously. "Very good." The corners of Wuxia's mouth curled up and a cold smile appeared on his face. He had already made up his mind. Since he could not bring the fairy doctor back alive, he could at least bring a dead one back. This was also the original intention of the sect leader when he sent him to deal with this matter. Just as he was about to make his move, he suddenly sensed something. He turned his head towards the entrance of the valley and shouted, "How dare you!" By the time he finished speaking, he had already disappeared. Only a streak of light could be seen rushing towards the entrance of the valley. He had sensed the commotion caused by Lu Yi killing the black-clothed cultivator. Inside the thatched hut, the little fairy doctor raised her head and stared in the direction of the entrance of the valley. Her eyes flickered with a faint light. Although there were many obstacles, she seemed to be able to see the situation over there clearly. She sighed softly as if she could not hear it. At the entrance of the valley, the scene was a mess. With Lu Yi at the front and the many cultivators who came to seek medical treatment behind him, the Heavenly Gully sect cultivators were forced to retreat. They clearly had more people, but they could not block Lu Yi's attacks at all. Until a certain moment, Lu Yi raised his head and saw a streak of light rushing towards him from the direction of the Medicine Valley. Before the person arrived, he had already vented his monstrous anger. "How dare you kill a disciple of my Heavenly Gully sect? Even if you die 10,000 times, you won't be able to absolve yourself from the blame." Lee, be careful, Lee cried out in a low voice. She had already sensed the strength of this person. Just as she finished speaking, Hupo, who was originally crouching on her shoulder to help her take care of Yi Lioli, leaped up and landed on Lu Ye's shoulder. Hupo was like a cat whose fur was standing on end. He lowered his body slightly, his fur standing on end, and let out a low growl from his throat. Hupo would only act like this when he was facing a threat. In Lu Ye's field of vision, everything around him had disappeared, leaving only the stalwart figure rushing towards him. Strong, very strong. Lu Yi had encountered many Cloud River Realm 9th Order cultivators. Not to mention those on the Cloud River battlefield, he had killed 2 Cloud River Realm 9th Order cultivators in the Soaring Dragon Realm. One was Pang Wanhai of the Divine Will sect, and the other was Sun Chi of the Heavenly Gully sect. But even though they were all 9th Order cultivators, the feeling they gave him was completely different. In terms of strength alone, Sun Chi was undoubtedly stronger than Pang Wanhai, but this person was even stronger than Sun Chi. The special environment of the Soaring Dragon Realm created a gap in strength between these Cloud River Realm 9th Order cultivators who could not improve their cultivation. Since they could not improve their cultivation, they could only hone their fighting skills and consolidate their foundation. The Cloud River Realm 9th Order cultivators of the Soaring Dragon Realm had truly reached the limit of the Cloud River Realm. Therefore, even if their cultivation was the same, their strength was completely different. It was just like the gap between the 3 malignant tumors on the Spirit Stream battlefield and the ordinary 9th Order cultivators. It's the 9th Elder of Heaven Gorge sect, Wuxia. Zhuang Bufan's voice rang in Lu Ye's ear. He is a sword cultivator. Brother Yi, be careful. Almost at the same time as Zhuang Bufan's voice rang out, an azure stream of light shot out from Wuxia's hand. A sharp aura locked onto Lu Yi, and the sharp aura cut into Lu Ye's skin, causing him to feel pain. Sword cultivators had always been known for their murderous nature. They were also the most lethal of all cultivation forces. In a comparison of strength between cultivators of the same level, sword cultivators often suppressed all other cultivation forces. Not to mention, Wuxia's cultivation was even higher than Lu Ye's. There was a flying sword in the cyan light, and all the sharpness and fierceness came from this flying sword. Even if they were not targeted by this flying sword, the cultivators who followed Lu Yi could not help but stop in their tracks. All of them felt a chill run down their spines, and in their panic, they felt as if the end of the world had come. When this sword appeared, everyone's hopes were dashed, and they suddenly felt as if there was no meaning in living anymore. Zhuang Bufan bit the tip of his tongue and forcibly broke free from his negative state. His heart was filled with shock. He had long heard that the top 10 elders of Heavenly Gully sect were all unparalleled in strength. Only after seeing them today did he realize that the rumors were not false. Just the flying sword of Wuxia, who was ranked 9th, had already reached the level of severing the heart before severing the body. It was hard to imagine how powerful the elders ranked above him were. Zhuang Bufan looked at Lu Yi with a worried expression. He did not know what would happen to Lu Yi. However, the scene he saw shocked him. Facing such a sword, this brother Yi actually stomped his feet on the ground. Wherever he stood, the ground cracked, and a pair of deep footprints appeared on the ground. His entire body shot out like an arrow that had left a bow. Fiery red spirit power surged around his body, making it seem as if he was enveloped in flames. Wuxia's sword intent did not affect him in the slightest. This was because Lu Ye's mind was strong enough. Intent was an ethereal, intangible thing that could not be seen or touched. It targeted the mind, so even if Lu Yi had never encountered such a killing move before, his mind was strong enough to resist the sword's intense influence on him. Wuxia was stunned as he looked at Lu Yi, who had managed to counterattack. He had never seen such a 6th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator before and coldly snorted, "No wonder you dared to kill my Heaven Gorge sect's disciples, it turns out you have something to rely on." In his opinion, Lu Yi definitely had a powerful master guiding him from behind. Perhaps he came from a top sect, otherwise, how could a brat like him display such strength? If it were before, Wuxia might not have killed Lu Yi if he had such thoughts. If he really provoked a top sect, His future days would not be easy. But now, how could he care about such things? The entire Heaven Gorge sect was about to stand on the opposite side of Dragon Soaring Realm. Sooner or later, they would be besieged by the three great tyrannical saber sects. What did it matter if he killed a little brat with unknown origins? With a single thought, Wuxia summoned his 100 swords, and the cyan sword lights suddenly split into 100 sword lights. All of them covered Lu Ye's body. This scene shocked the cultivators below into silence. Jianghu Fan's face also changed as he muttered, "It's over." In his opinion, it was impossible for Lu Yi to survive such a sword strike. However, immediately after, a figure charged out from the boundless swordlight. Lu Ye's clothes were in tatters as blood flew through the air. Wounds were visible to the naked eye, and his flesh was torn apart. A sword cultivator's murderous intent was terrifying, but the murderous intent of a ninth-order Cloud River Realm sword cultivator was even more terrifying. What was even more terrifying was the murderous intent of a ninth-order Cloud River Realm sword cultivator like Wuxia. If he had not activated his spirit rune to protect his body, it would have been impossible for him to block that sword strike. His physique is so strong? Wuxia was a little surprised. Others might not have seen what happened just now, but how could he not have seen it clearly? The strange spirit chi barrier that had suddenly appeared and the mysterious runes were clearly something that only a battle inscription master could display. If it was just this, it would have been fine, but the key was that this little brat's physique was too tyrannical. After his flying sword broke through his defensive means, it did not cause any fatal injuries. Lu Yi looked battered and exhausted at the moment, but in fact he had only suffered some superficial wounds. While Wuxia was lost in thought, Lu Yi had already arrived in front of him. On his shoulder, Hoopa roared and an invisible impact spread out along with the sound waves, rushing straight into Wuxia's mind. Wuxia felt as if his head had been hit by a hammer, and he saw stars. Although he had only escaped in an instant, he had already seen a few sword lights. Anxiously, specks of saber light covered the area like a curtain of stars. Wuxia's eyes narrowed as a great uneasiness rose in his heart. Only now did he realize that he had underestimated this young man. To be continued. Chapter 704. The blue light returned to Wuxia's hand, and he seemed to have turned into an unsheathed sword. Saber light and sword light intertwined as the two figures clashed. Lu Ye's figure floated back a few dozen meters as blood splattered across the sky. On his shoulder, Hoopa looked awe-inspiring as their blood chi merged. On the other side, Wuxia also floated back a few dozen meters. His black clothes were soon soaked with blood. He looked deeply at Lu Yi, as if he wanted to imprint Lu Ye's figure into the depths of his soul. Then he looked fiercely in the direction of the Medicine Valley's thatched hut and gritted his teeth. "Cheap slut, you're good?" After saying that, he turned around and left. It was one thing for such a powerful sixth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator to suddenly appear, but more importantly, he didn't know when he was poisoned. He hadn't noticed it before, but after fighting with Lu Yi, he realized that something was wrong with him. In this world, who else but the little fairy doctor would be able to poison him without anyone noticing? He thought about it, but he still couldn't figure out when he was poisoned. He was deeply shocked by the little fairy doctor's terrifying methods. Fortunately, this woman didn't kill, and the poison she gave him wasn't the kind that could take his life. Otherwise, he would be dead by now. He ran away? The group of cultivators below was dumbfounded, as if they were in a dream. When Wuxia rushed out of the Medicine Valley, these cultivators who came to seek medical treatment thought that a great disaster was imminent. They dared to follow Lu Yi and break through the Heaven Canyon sect's defensive line because there were no decent masters in front of them, and Lu Yi was leading them. But in the face of a famous master like Wuxia, they didn't have the courage to act rashly. They thought that Lu Yi was dead for sure and that they would be killed, but who knew that the situation would change like this? They didn't know that Wuxia was poisoned, and only thought that Lu Yi had injured him and driven him away. For a moment, Lu Yi was shocked. The cultivators who came to seek medical treatment were shocked, but the defeated Heaven Canyon sect's cultivators were even more shocked. Seeing that their ninth elder had fled quickly, They didn't dare to stay and fled in all directions. No one chased after them, and soon, they were all gone. Only then did Lu Yi float down from the sky, a look of contemplation flashing across his eyes. Although he had been practicing the tyrant saber art all this time, strictly speaking, this was the second enemy he had used the tyrant saber art to deal with. Sure enough, the feeling of cultivating by himself was different from when he was facing an enemy. Activating the tyrant saber art in such a life and death battle allowed him to have a deeper understanding and comprehension of this saber art. It also greatly aided his cultivation of this saber art. The benefits were endless. Although he did not know that Wuxia had left decisively because he had been poisoned, the words that Wuxia had said before he left made him understand that the owner of the Medicine Valley must have done something to him that made him feel threatened. If they were to continue fighting, Lu Yi was not afraid. He might not be Wuxia's match in a short period of time, but as long as he could hold on for a while, he was confident that he could defeat Wuxia. No matter what, whether it was the power of the blood-stained spiritual tattoos or the beast transformation secret skill, they all needed to accumulate power before they could unleash their power slowly. Once the battle reached the point where he had to use his beast transformation secret technique, Wuxia would die without a doubt. The heritage of this world's ninth order Cloud River Realm Masters was truly unimaginable. Lu Yi was only the ninth elder, so how strong were the people ranked above him? Brother Yi, are you all right? Jianghu Fan asked with concern, mainly because Lu Ye's appearance was somewhat miserable, his clothes in tatters and his body covered in wounds. Lu Yi shook his head, just some minor injuries. Jianghu Fan was full of admiration. Brother Yi is really fierce. Before, he had always thought that Lu Yi was a disciple from some top sect, but after seeing that shocking saber strike, he suddenly realized who he was. Wasn't this sixth Yi the sixth young lord of tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa? That fierce saber strike was undoubtedly the tyrant saber art. He had also heard about tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa, but he didn't know much about it. A 13 or 14-year-old medicine boy with rosy lips and white teeth floated out from the depths of the Medicine Valley, bowed, and said, "Senior brothers, my master invites you." Lu Yi returned the courtesy. "I was forced to break the Medicine Valley's rules. I hope master will forgive me." The medicine boy smiled and shook his head, looking as if he didn't care. The Heavenly Gorge sect had come aggressively and acted in such a domineering manner. These apprentice alchemists had long found them an eyesore. Unfortunately, they were too weak to change anything. Now that Lu Yi had helped them chase Wuxia away and killed a group of Heavenly Gorge sect cultivators, the apprentice alchemists couldn't thank him enough. How could they care about the rules? "Fellow cultivator, please go first." Among the cultivators who came to seek medical treatment, someone gestured with his hand. The others also chimed in one after another. Strong cultivators were respected no matter where they were, and the dragon soaring realm was no exception. After witnessing the battle between Lu Yi and Wuxia, who would look down on him because of his age and cultivation level. Moreover, without Lu Yi, these people would probably still be blocked at the entrance of the Medicine Valley, unable to enter. It was only natural for Lu Yi to go first. Lu Yi didn't refuse. He supported Jianghu Fan, who was panting, and Ledi, who was carrying Yi Lioli, into the Medicine Valley. The others followed closely behind. Soon, the entrance of the Medicine Valley was empty, leaving only bloodstains and corpses on the ground, indicating the battle that had just taken place. Under the guidance of the medicine boy, the group quickly arrived in front of the straw hut in the center of the Medicine Valley. The medicine boy bowed, "Master, I've brought the person." Lu Yi cupped his fists and said in a clear voice, "Feng Province's Yi Lu, together with his sister Yi Lioli and friend Jianghu Fan, requests the little fairy doctor to save him. It's a doctor's duty to treat illnesses and get rid of disasters. Little friend, you're too polite. Come in." A gentle voice came from inside the straw hut. The voice seemed to have a magical power that made people feel as if they were bathed in a spring breeze. Just listening to the voice made people feel light. Lu Yi and Yi were surprised at the same time. They looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Frowning slightly, Lu Yi said, "Sorry to disturb you." As he spoke, he walked in. The The straw hut was not big, and it was filled with a variety of complex herbal smells. A plump figure immediately entered Lu Ye's eyes. The figure's back was facing Lu Ye, so he couldn't see her face. She was wearing a long green dress, and her black hair hung down to her waist. The woman seemed to be pounding the herbs, one stroke after another, meticulously. This woman was undoubtedly the owner of the Medicine Valley, the little fairy doctor. Lu Yi stared at her back, and Yi was also dumbfounded. After a long while, Yi turned to look at Lu Yi. Her mouth moved but no sound came out. But Lu Yi knew what she wanted to say and slowly shook his head. Immediately after, under the extremely shocked gaze of Jianghu Fan, Lu Yi strode forward and stood in front of the fairy doctor, his gaze fixed on her face without blinking. Seeing her face, Lu Ye's pupils shrank, and his thumbs subconsciously rubbed the Panshan blade at his waist. "Brother, what are you doing?" Jianghu Fan shouted in his heart. If it wasn't for the fact that it was inconvenient for him to move, he would have rushed forward and pulled Lu Yi back. "We're here to seek medical treatment. How can we stare at someone's face in front of them? What a scandal!" In the entire Soaring Dragon realm, the little fairy doctor's connections and prestige were top-notch. No one dared to look down on her because she was a woman. Even if she was really as beautiful as a flower, we shouldn't be so rude. Moreover, he felt that Lu Yi was not the kind of person who liked women. He was anxious and couldn't help but cough violently. Being stared at such a close distance, the little fairy doctor couldn't help but frown. No one had ever dared to stare at her like this. She stopped pounding the herbs and looked at Lu Yi. She asked curiously, "Little friend, is there something on my face?" "Little friend." It was really strange to hear this form of address from the owner of this face. Lu Yi narrowed his eyes and said, "No, I just feel that you look a little familiar." It was more than familiar, it was simply too familiar. When they heard the little fairy doctor's voice, Lu Yi and Yi felt that it was a little inconceivable. Because that voice was exactly the same as Hua Xi's voice. However, if they really wanted to compare, the little fairy doctor's voice had more of the vicissitudes of life. After entering the thatched hut and seeing the little fairy doctor's back, Lu Yi and Yi felt even more inconceivable. Because from the back, the two of them almost thought that the person standing here was Hua Xi. So even if Lu Yi felt that it was impossible, he couldn't help but want to verify it with his own eyes. He couldn't wait to walk in front of the little fairy doctor and stare at her. With this look, Lu Yi almost couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing here?" There was no other reason. The little fairy doctor's face was exactly the same as Hua Xi's. If he met such a woman in any other place in the Cloudy River battlefield, Lu Yi would definitely think that Hua Xi had advanced to the Cloudy River realm and come to the Cloudy River battlefield. But this was the Soaring Dragon realm's secret realm. He came in through the transportation array outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. In the entire Cloudy River battlefield, other than him, no one else had the ability to repair that transportation array. So it was impossible for Hua Xi to come in. There was no reaction from the battlefield imprint. One had to know that whether it was him, Hua Xi or Yi, they were all disciples of the Jade Blood Sect. They all had the battlefield imprint that belonged to the Jade Blood Sect. If they were from the same sect, when they were close enough, they would be able to sense each other. Back then, his eldest apprentice Sister Wei Yang had brazenly charged into the Spirit Stream battlefield with a cultivation base at the True Lake realm. Even though Lu Yi had never seen her before, nor had he ever heard of her before, his battlefield imprint had told him that she was one of his own. The woman in front of him, whose figure, voice and appearance were exactly the same as Hua Xi, didn't have a battlefield imprint. This meant that she wasn't Hua Xi. Of course, the most important point was that this woman was more mature than Hua Xi. In terms of age, Hua Xi was actually not that old. Lu Yi estimated that she was at most 1 or 2 years older than him. It was just that Hua Xi's aura leaned towards the mature and plump type. And the little fairy doctor in front of him was the kind of woman who was thoroughly mature. She looked like a more mature Hua Xi, and there was not a single part of her body that did not exude an astonishing charm. To be continued. Chapter 705. That woman Wuxia is probably like this. Lu Yi thought to himself. I don't think I've seen little friend before, but little friend's tyrant saber technique seems to have been passed down to you by your father. The Yi family has a worthy successor. The little fairy doctor said. Although her expression was still calm, her voice gave off an extremely warm and gentle feeling. Although she was a doctor, she was also a 9th order Cloud River realm cultivator, which was why Wuxia had not used violence against her. If they really fought, Wuxia was confident that he could take her down, but it would take some effort. She had clearly seen the battle between Lu Yi and Wuxia at the entrance of the valley, so it was not surprising that she recognized the tyrant saber technique. After all, Ying had often come to the medicine valley to ask for medicine over the years. Fellow Taoist is too kind. Lu Yi put away the distracting thoughts in his heart. The little fairy doctor frowned. Your father called me senior sister, so you should call me senior. I'm much older than you think. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Even if the little fairy doctor was ugly, Lu Yi would have no qualms about calling her senior, but she had Hua Xi's face, so it was impossible for him to call her senior. My sister's old illness has acted up again, and it seems to be much more serious than before. Please help her, fellow Taoist. Lu Yi pretended not to hear what she just said and continued, and Brother Zhuang, he's hopeless. The little fairy doctor did not even look at Zhuang Bufan. Zhuang Bufan's blood instantly turned cold. His injuries were indeed extremely serious, and even after consuming the healing pill, there was no effect at all. In this world, the only person who could save him was the little fairy doctor. If even the little fairy doctor said that he could not be saved, then he really could not be saved. With a sad face, he said, Senior, although I don't know what you've done, your vitality has been greatly damaged and your soul has been injured. My methods can no longer heal you. You have about 3 months left to live. In these 3 months, your cultivation will gradually decline, and in the end, your spiritual energy will be exhausted and you will die. Zhuang Bufan's heart turned even colder. The little fairy doctor did not even look at him, but she had already seen through his body's condition. This undoubtedly proved that the little fairy doctor's medical skills were not in vain, but the more it was so, the more it proved that her judgment was not wrong. 3 months of lifespan. Zhuang Bufan felt as if he had been struck by lightning, and his entire being became muddle-headed. Just a month ago, he was still living freely and unfettered in the world, yet now he actually only had 3 months of lifespan left. Life was truly unpredictable. His heart was full of annoyance. Why did he have to get his hands on that thing? Why did he have to be so curious and test it out? His body was damaged to such an extent. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. It was useless to be upset about this now. Fellow Taoist, is there really nothing you can do? Lu Yi frowned. Zhuang Bufan was a very good person. His injuries were already so severe, but when he encountered a mortal in trouble, he still resolutely stepped forward to help. For such a person to only have 3 months of lifespan left due to some unknown reasons, it was quite a pity. The fairy doctor shook her head. Lu Yi was silent. However, he quickly thought of something and hurriedly took out a jade bottle from his storage bag and handed it to the little fairy doctor. Fellow Taoist, please take a look. Is this useful to Brother Zhuang? The fairy doctor took it and opened the jade bottle to take a look. She raised her eyebrows and looked at Lu Yi in astonishment. Are you willing? The jade bottle contained nothing else but soul-cleansing water. The fairy doctor just said that Zhuang Bufan's vitality was greatly damaged and his divine soul was injured, so the soul-cleansing water should be useful. Although he had met Zhuang Bufan by chance, his character was worthy of respect. It would be a pity for such a person to die like this. Therefore, even though Lu Yi knew that the person he met in this secret realm might not be a real person, he still couldn't help but want to help. Since you've taken it out, there's nothing to be reluctant about. The little fairy doctor said, with this item, I can lessen his pain. However, it is impossible to save him. A cultivator's body was like a balloon. No matter what kind of injuries they suffered, as long as they were treated in time, it wouldn't be a big problem. However, Zhuang Bufan's body was like a balloon at this moment. In the eyes of the fairy doctor, it was full of holes. It was not something that could be solved with just the soul-cleansing water. Jianghu Fan must have used a method that was far beyond his ability to bear, resulting in such a terrible result. Brother Yi, there's no need to waste such a precious thing on me. This Zhuang has lived a free and unfettered life. Being able to meet a character like Brother Yi before I die, my life has not been in vain. He was still a Cloud River 9th Order cultivator, so although he had suffered a sudden blow, he quickly adjusted his mentality. Of course, he didn't know what treasure Lu Yi had taken out, but if it could move the fairy doctor so much, how could it be an ordinary treasure? The fairy doctor turned her head and glanced at him before gently saying, "You'd better accept his good intentions, otherwise, within 3 days, the pain you've been suppressing will definitely drive you crazy. When that time comes, you'll wish you were dead." Jianghu Fan shuddered when he heard this. For many cultivators, life and death were normal. Sometimes, death was not scary, but if one wished to die, it was hard to accept. If that's the case, many thanks, Brother Yi. Many thanks, Senior. Jianghu Fan bowed solemnly. The fairy doctor nodded and put away the jade bottle in her hand. She then glanced at Yi Lioli and said, "This is an old illness of hers. I can't cure it completely and can only alleviate it. However, the prescription is ready-made. You can come and find me tomorrow to collect the medicine." "Many thanks, fellow Taoist. There's no need to thank me. It's a doctor's duty to save people, and you have to pay for the medicine." Jianghu Fan hurriedly said, "How much is the medicine? The Shuang has some wealth." "You can't afford it," the fairy doctor interrupted him. The little fairy doctor interrupted him and looked at Lu Yi. "Today, you repelled Wuxia and killed a cultivator from the Heavenly Gorge sect. The Heavenly Gorge sect will definitely not let this matter rest. My Medicine Valley never fights. I don't wish for anyone to fight in the Medicine Valley and disturb the peace here. I understand. Fellow Taoist, you can rest assured that the people of Heaven Canyon sect will not disturb you." "That would be for the best." The fairy doctor lowered her head and busied herself again. "There are thatched huts outside. Find one for yourselves." Lu Yi then led Yi and Jianghu Fan away and found 2 thatched huts to settle Yi Lu Li and Jianghu Fan down. "Lu Yi, that wasn't Sister Hua Si, right? In the thatched hut?" "Of course not." Lu Yi shook his head. Yi still found it hard to believe. But how can there be such a similar person in this world? It was more than similar, it was practically the same. It was just that the fairy doctor was more familiar with Hua Si. If it was just a simple similarity in appearance, it would be fine. The key was that even their voices were almost the same, which was a little unbelievable. Lu Ye's eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking, but he said softly, "Maybe it's not just a simple similarity, then what is it?" He asked, puzzled. Lu Yi shook his head. Although he had some guesses, he couldn't be sure of the truth. If things were really as he thought, then it would be interesting. In the entire cultivation world, there were only a few people he was close to. The Hua Si, second senior sister, fourth senior brother, sect leader, Madame Jin. Among them, he had known Hua Si for a long time. Although they didn't spend much time together because of their different cultivation methods, they had experienced life and death together. Even if they hadn't seen each other for a long time, he wouldn't feel distant. There was no doubt that Hua Si could make him let down his guard and make him feel close to her. Even if it was just the same appearance and voice as Hua Si, there were many things he couldn't understand for the time being, but Lu Yi didn't believe that there would be such similar people in 2 different worlds. This was completely unreasonable. "Take care of Lu Li. I'll go pay for the medicine," Lu Yi ordered and walked out of the thatched hut. There was a long line outside the thatched hut where the little fairy doctor was. There were constantly cultivators coming in and out of the hut. Those who were waiting were full of anticipation, and those who came out were grateful. It was obvious that the little fairy doctor was capable of this. Generally speaking, cultivators who came to the Medicine Valley to seek treatment would pay all kinds of strange medicine. Basically, they would pay whatever they had, but most of them were spirit stones or spirit pills. The little fairy doctor didn't ask Lu Yi for medicine or spirit stones or spirit pills. She had already made it very clear that the Heaven Gully sect would probably not let today's matter go. It was very likely that they would come back again. Therefore, Louis had to pay to resist the Heaven Gully sect's trouble. That woman has so much confidence in me. Louis felt strange. Why did she think that he, a sixth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, could resist a behemoth like the Heaven Gully sect? Did she think that he could repel Wuxia's saber? It was obviously not convincing. Unless this woman knew some details about him. For example, he was proficient in Array Dao. Moreover, his attainments in Array Dao far surpassed the entire Soaring Dragon realm. Things were getting more and more confusing. However, Li didn't intend to refuse. After all, it wasn't difficult for him to resist a possible external enemy. He had personally set up many of the great arrays in Heaven Returning Valley. Now, it wouldn't take much effort to set up another Medicine Valley, especially now that his attainments in Array Dao were much higher than before. Louis walked around the Medicine Valley and checked the nearby terrain. Through his perception, he could indeed sense that there was pure and rich world energy below the Medicine Valley. That should be the location of the Earth Vein. Louis couldn't help but have some thoughts. In the past, when he set up arrays, he only relied on the power of the array itself. However, a truly brilliant array cultivator could use things like the Earth Vein and Spirit Vein to take root in the array. In this way, the array could integrate with the Earth Vein and Spirit Vein, greatly increasing its power. As long as the Earth Vein and Spirit Vein were not broken, the array would not be broken. In the past, he didn't do this mainly because he wasn't skilled enough. But now, he had the capital to try. If he could set up a great array with the Earth Vein in the Medicine Valley as the foundation, then the power of the array here would be much stronger than that in Heaven Returning Valley. Moreover, this would also help him improve his attainments in Array Dao. In the process of practicing, he could verify what he had learned and digest the huge gift of the 100 Formation Tower. To be continued. Chapter 706. After leaving the Imperial Heavenly Sect, Huang Liang headed north. The further he went, the more uneasy he felt. It was as if a great disaster was about to befall him. Looking north again, there seemed to be a bloody light soaring into the sky, and vengeful spirits were wailing. He had divined several times over the past few days, and all he got was a great disaster. What happened in the north? Before his master passed away, he obviously sensed something, but at that time, he was already on his deathbed and didn't have time to tell him in detail before he passed away. If not, Huang Liang wouldn't have insisted on making a trip to the north. Because in that direction, only an existence like the Heavenly Gully could make his master pay attention to it. Unlike ordinary dragon soaring realm cultivators, Huang Liang, who came from an overlord sect, more or less knew some secrets. The Heavenly Gully appeared 800 years ago and seemed to have no effect on the dragon soaring realm, but in fact, the effect was subtle. Under that subtle influence, the upper limit of the dragon soaring realm cultivators kept decreasing, from the divine ocean realm to the true lake realm, from the true lake realm to the cloud river realm. Perhaps there would be a day when the dragon soaring realm would no longer have cultivators. When the Heavenly Gully appeared, there was a divine ocean realm cultivator from the Imperial Heavenly Sect who divined and got the divination that a great disaster was about to befall the world. Unfortunately, that elder only had time to tell the divination and didn't have time to say anything else before he passed away. However, in the past 800 years, this divination had been passed down by the Imperial Heavenly Sect. In every generation, only the sect master and a few top elders knew about it. Counting the time, although it hadn't been 1,000 years since the Heavenly Gully appeared, it was not far off. Could it be that it was time to verify that divination? If so, it would be a true disaster for the dragon soaring realm. However, until today, no one in the dragon soaring realm's cultivation world could figure out what the Heavenly Gully was. If a disaster was about to befall, how would the dragon soaring realm resist it? Then what was the disaster that the divination showed? Therefore, he had to see it with his own eyes. Only then would he know. Huang Liang suddenly turned his head and looked in a certain direction. He saw a green-robed man sitting in a pavilion. He held a book in his hand and was carefully studying it with great interest. With this glance, only the green-robed man's figure was left in the world, and Huang Liang seemed to hear the sound of someone reciting something. That figure was magnified infinitely in his field of vision. Righteous energy filled the air, as if he was a celestial being. That is, Huang Liang immediately changed his direction and flew toward the pavilion. When he was near, he landed and bowed respectfully. Huang Liang of the Imperial Heaven Sect greets Senior Lu. If other soaring dragon realm cultivators saw this scene, they would probably be shocked. Huang Liang of the Imperial Heavenly Sect was the sect master of the Imperial Heavenly Sect. Regardless of status, cultivation, or age, he could be considered to be at the peak of this world. In this world, the number of people who could make him respectfully address them as senior could be counted on one hand. The green-robed man with the book in his hand was undoubtedly one of them. Howran Academy, Lu Tianyi. His status in Howran Academy was equivalent to Huang Liang's master, Li Sa. When Huang Liang was still very young, he had accompanied Li Sa to meet Lu Tianyi. Even after so many years, he still didn't dare to forget it, so he recognized the other party's identity at a glance. When he bowed, Huang Liang thought in his heart, it said that this senior doesn't have much lifespan left. He has been cultivating in Howran Academy for so many years, but he came out at this time. Could it be, your master and I have known each other for many years? When we were young, we even fought a few times. Later on, we led the Imperial Heavenly Sect and Howran Academy for many years, but neither of us was convinced by the other. However, I won in the end. He didn't live as long as me, huh? Lu Tianyi put down the book in his hand and laughed loudly, looking rather carefree. Huang Liang looked unhappy and said in a deep voice, "Senior, you led me here to tell me this?" He had been heading north all the way, so it didn't make sense for him to meet Lu Tianyi here, nor did it make sense for him to discover Lu Tianyi immediately. The other party was obviously doing it on purpose. His master was already dead, so he naturally didn't want to hear anyone's words, even if the person who said it was Lu Tianyi. Lu Tianyi glanced at him and said, "There's no need to take it to heart. Actually, for people like me and your master, death isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes, living is the most painful thing." What did cultivators pursue in their lives? It was nothing more than a higher cultivation level, a stronger cultivation level, climbing one peak after another, and seeing one scenery after another. Whether it was Li Sa or Lu Tianyi, they were both geniuses that appeared once in 100 years in the dragon soaring realm. For people like them, their achievements shouldn't be limited to the Cloud River tier, but because of the limitations of heaven and earth, they couldn't find the path ahead. If they didn't know there was a path ahead, then so be it. However, there was indeed a path ahead. Not only was there a path, but it was also a very wide and long path. For ordinary Cloud River tier cultivators, perhaps they wouldn't feel much, but for Li Sa and Lu Tianyi, although they had lived these years, their lives had been very painful. Huang Liang lowered his brows, thinking. His master had been in seclusion all these years, and even as his personal disciple, it wasn't easy to see him. Even if they met, he didn't feel any joy from his master. Instead, he felt a strong sense of lethargy and silence. How could he not know that Lu Tianyi wasn't comforting him? The hostility in his heart dissipated, and Huang Liang lowered his brows and eyes. "Senior is right." He then asked, "Could it be that Senior has also come out of seclusion this time to head north?" Lu Tianyi nodded. "I have a feeling, and I have to go take a look to be at ease." What did Senior notice? This was also what Huang Liang couldn't understand the most. He knew that people like his master and Lu Tianyi actually carried a part of the fortune of the dragon soaring realm. Thus, even if their cultivation level was limited to the Cloud River tier like other cultivators, their true strength was stronger than the common knowledge of all Cloud River tier cultivators. They could also sense some things that ordinary people couldn't. Before his master passed away, he had obviously sensed something. What had Lu Tianyi sensed? It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Lu Tianyi shook his head. It was hard to say because there were some things that couldn't be said. It was possible that Lu Tianyi himself hadn't sensed anything useful, and had only vaguely sensed that there were some changes in the north. Huang Liang scratched his ears and cheeks for a moment. He thought, why is a scholar like you beating around the bush with me? However, he couldn't ask any more questions. Then, Senior, are you waiting for me here? Waiting for you is only convenient. I'm mainly waiting for an old fart, Lu Tianyi replied. Old fart? The corner of Huang Liang's eye twitched. There was probably only one other person in this world besides his master that could be called an old fart by Lu Tianyi. Could it be that person has also come out of seclusion? Just as he was thinking this, a voice that sounded like the morning bell rang out beside his ear. It's been many years since we last met, but you're still the same. The voice was loud but not deafening, and Huang Liang couldn't help but feel refreshed. When he looked up, he saw a thin figure strolling toward him. At first, he was still far away, but in the blink of an eye, he was already halfway there. In the blink of an eye, he was right in front of him. Ground shrink. Huang Liang was shocked. It was rumored that this was a secret technique that could only be cultivated by cultivators who had reached the true lake stage. He never thought that he would see it with his own eyes one day. The person who came was obviously not in the true lake stage, but he still managed to cultivate this secret technique. These seniors who were terrifyingly old and carried great fortune were all incredible. Greetings, Master. Huang Liang hurriedly bowed. The skinny bald monk in front of him was much older than his master, Lisa. He was the oldest person in the entire Soaring Dragon realm. How could he dare to be disrespectful in front of such a person? He sighed. Usually, people would call him senior and bow to him. Today, he was the youngest and had the lowest seniority among the 3 people present. I don't believe in Buddhism, and I'm not a monk. Old monk, don't make a fuss, Lu Tianyi said with a look of disdain. Fa Hua smiled wholeheartedly. Buddhism is in the heart. What does it matter if I believe in it or not? He turned to look at Huang Liang. You're the little boy beside Benefactor Li, right? Huang Liang hurriedly said, yes. Fa Hua nodded. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 years have passed. Benefactor Li has also ascended to paradise. Congratulations. What was there to celebrate? Huang Liang did not know whether to laugh or cry. He only felt that he was somewhat at odds with these 2 seniors. Lu Tianyi snorted coldly. Old monk, before I left, I performed a divination for you. Looking at you now, your glabella is dark and you're surrounded by death energy. I'm afraid you won't live for long. Have you made arrangements for your disciples and grand-disciples before you leave? Fa Hua laughed even more happily. His 2 long eyebrows were trembling. If that's the case, it's my fortune. As for what happens after I die, I came here naked, and I'll leave naked too. I have no regrets in life, so why should I care about what happens after I die? As for you, benefactor, since you know that this trip is dangerous, why did you come? Lu Tianyi laughed. If an old fart like you can come, why can't I? Fa Hua sighed. This realm still needs someone to take care of it. That might not be me. Lu Tianyi waved his hand. My children and grandchildren have their own lives. Why should I worry so much? Fa Hua did not say anything. While the 2 of them were talking, Huang Liang stood at the side with his eyebrows drooping. He was like a quail without a nest in winter. He could not interrupt, nor did he dare to interrupt. Why did I think of going north? What kind of sin did I commit? Let's go? What are you waiting for? Lu Tianyi asked. Let's go. Fa Hua nodded. Then, the 2 of them looked at Huang Liang who was standing at the side with his head lowered. Huang Liang shuddered and immediately understood the 2 seniors' intentions. He hurriedly took out his air transportation spirit tool and threw it in front of him. Seniors, please. Who asked him to have the lowest seniority? If he did not do something like flying on a spirit tool, how could he expect the 2 of them to do it? He had never thought that he, the sect leader of the Imperial Heavenly Sect, would be ordered around like this one day. However, he did not dare to complain. A streak of light shot towards the north. To be continued. Chapter 707. The heavenly gully stretched across the sky like a scar, a ghastly sight. It had been like this since the heavenly gully appeared 800 years ago. It hadn't changed much over the years, but that was just what the world thought. Only the cultivators who were closest to the heavenly gully and accompanied it all year round could sense the subtle changes. Looking around, the heavenly gully seemed to be a void shrouded in endless darkness, but occasionally, something would roll through the heavenly gully and disappear in a flash. The world didn't know what was hidden in the heavenly gully. Even the heavenly gully sect, which was stationed here, didn't know. Some heavenly gully sect cultivators once flew into the heavenly gully, but they disappeared without a trace. At this moment, somewhere below the heavenly gully, an imposing figure stood with his hands behind his back. He looked up at the heavenly gully, a strange light flashing in his eyes from time to time. This person was the sect master of Heavenly Gully Sect, Tian Sheng. No one knew his real name or where he came from. It was as if he had suddenly emerged from a corner. Before he established Heavenly Gully Sect, no one had ever seen him. Nearly 200 years ago, he established the foundation of Heavenly Gully Sect here and called himself Tian Sheng. After that, he wantonly gathered masters from all over the Soaring Dragon realm and strengthened Heavenly Gully Sect step by step. It became a force that wasn't inferior to the three overlord sects in the eyes of the world today. It had dozens of Ninth Order elders under its command. But no matter what his origin was, he dared to call himself Tian Sheng, which showed his ambition and boldness. Two people stood behind him. One of them was old with white hair and a beard. He was Heavenly Gully Sect's great elder, Xing Emma. The other was a mighty man with a long sword. He was the second elder, Cheng Henfeng. The two of them accompanied Tian Sheng here, looking at the crack in the sky with complicated gazes. They were different from the unknown people before the appearance of the heavenly sage. Both of them were famous people back then, especially Cheng Henfeng. He came from a powerful force like the Howran Academy. His calligraphy and sword skills were all passed down by generations of sages. He had already surpassed his master. However, nearly 100 years ago, he betrayed Howran Academy for some unknown reason and joined the Heavenly Canyon Sect. He became the second elder of the Heavenly Canyon Sect. As a swordsman, the ninth elder Wuxia had challenged Cheng Henfeng to spar with him more than once. However, he had never won against him. It was obvious how powerful Cheng Henfeng was. Cheng Henfeng no longer cared about the grudges of the past. After all, so much time had passed. If he kept thinking about it, how could he cultivate? Right now, he only cared about one thing, and that was his future path. This was also what all the cultivators in the Soaring Dragon realm who had reached the peak of their cultivation were most concerned about. It was also the reason why he was willing to serve under the Heavenly Saint and assist him. Is the exit really in the ravine? Looking at the scar in the sky, Cheng Henfeng narrowed his eyes, and a trace of confusion flashed across his eyes. Even at this point, he still couldn't get an accurate answer. Strange laughter came from the side. The sound was like metal rubbing against stone. It was extremely ear-piercing. Great Elder Xing Mo's wrinkled face trembled. The changes in the Soaring Dragon realm started when the ravine appeared. 800 years have passed, and the deity ocean and true lake have long disappeared. There are only clouds and rivers. If the exit is not in the ravine, where else can it be? Moreover, the sect leader has personally felt it. Even if you don't believe in yourself, don't you believe in the sect leader? Cheng Henfeng shook his head. Of course not. It's just that. He lowered his gaze and looked in front of him. Shrill screams and endless curses rang in his ears. Right below the ravine, deep ditches crisscrossed, covering a radius of dozens of miles. If one were to look down from high up in the sky, these crisscrossing ravines shockingly formed an extremely complicated and exquisite grand formation, and at the center of the grand formation, there was even a 300 m tall altar standing there. Many ships were hovering in the air. Countless cultivators of the Heavenly Gorge sect were busy chasing the mortals they had captured off the ships and killing them one by one. Their blood flowed into the gorge, and their corpses were tossed into the gorge. In the ravine, a river of blood flowed. Countless corpses floated in it. Bubbles burst one after another, as if there were vengeful spirits roaring in it. The screams were the last sounds of these mortals before they died. The mortals that Lu Yi and Zhuang Bufan had encountered were just a batch of them. In fact, the Heaven Ravine sect had already extended their vicious hands to the entire Snow Province. Not only the mortals, but even the cultivators had been captured and suffered the same fate as the mortals. Seeing this hellish scene, even the toughest cultivators couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Begging for mercy, shouting and cursing sounded from all directions, but they couldn't stop their fate of death. The Heavenly Ravine sect had been planning for this day for many years. They did not make a move, but when they did, they acted like a thunderbolt. The Snow Province was now empty. If Zhuang Bufan hadn't spread some news, no one in the Soaring Dragon realm would have known that such a change had occurred in Snow Province. Even though Zhuang Bufan was a ninth-order cultivator, he was alone. Even if the news was passed to the three overlord sects, it was impossible to predict what they would do. It was very likely that they would send people to investigate first, and when the evidence was conclusive, they would join forces to suppress them. But if that was really the case, who knew how long it would take? Although Cheng Henfeng had joined the Heaven Ravine sect, he was still from Howren Academy. He didn't care about killing people. He had killed a lot of people in his life. Slaughtering mortals and cultivators of Snow Province so wantonly made him somewhat uncomfortable. For the ultimate goal, all sacrifices are worth it, the Heavenly Saint said with his hands behind his back. No one noticed that the strange light in his eyes was getting stronger and stronger. Religion Master is wise. Xing Mo's crow-like voice cried out, opening the way for future generations and inheriting the supreme techniques of our predecessors. Religion Master's contributions are as high as the sky, and his name will go down in history. Go down in history. The Heavenly Saint's mouth curled up slightly, his face full of sarcasm. Heaven Ravine sect, you will die a horrible death. The three overlord sects will enforce justice on behalf of heaven. The roar of a cultivator before his death could be heard from afar. Then, he was killed without causing any commotion. At this moment, Xing Mo suddenly took out a sound transmission stone from his pocket and listened carefully. A look of surprise appeared on his old face. What's the matter? The Heavenly Saint asked without looking back. Wuxia has failed. Cheng Henfeng was stunned. What happened? Although Wuxia wasn't his opponent, he was still a top sword cultivator in Soaring Dragon. Looking at the entire Soaring Dragon realm, there weren't many people who could defeat him. How could he fail when he was just going to the Medicine Valley? He said that a young junior blocked his way. He seems to be the successor of the Domineering Blade. Domineering Blade. Cheng Henfeng's eyes showed that he was deep in thought. He quickly thought of the Domineering Blade Mountain Villa in Feng Province. He had heard of Yi Ying's name before, but he was just a rising star, so he had never taken him seriously. However, if this successor of the Domineering Blade could defeat Wuxia, he was quite capable. Religion Master, should I go personally? Xing Mo asked. The Heavenly Saint was about to speak when he suddenly sensed something. He turned his head and looked in a direction, squinting slightly. It's too late. His reaction is quite fast. Xing Mo and Cheng Henfeng were both confused. They followed the Heavenly Saint's gaze and saw nothing. However, very quickly, a ray of flowing light entered their field of vision. There are so many people who aren't afraid of death these days. Religion Master, let me take him down. Xing Mo volunteered. The person who had come was obviously not an ordinary person. Xing Mo hadn't fought for many years and couldn't help but want to fight. You're no match for him, the Heavenly Saint said calmly. The smile on Xing Mo's face froze. There were indeed many strong people in the world, but only a few could defeat him. The Heavenly Saint in front of him was one of them. The rest were all old immortals who had lived for many years. Could it be? Xing Mo vaguely sensed something. The long sword on Cheng Henfeng's back also started to hum softly. Amitba! A loud Buddhist chant was heard, accompanied by endless anger. It was like a thunderclap on a clear day. Many disciples of the Heaven Canyon sect felt their heads buzzing and they saw stars. They couldn't stand steadily and staggered. It's that old immortal. The corners of Xing Mo's eyes twitched. He immediately recalled some unpleasant memories. When he was young, he had suffered greatly at the hands of this old monk. The flowing light that was speeding toward them stopped, and 3 figures appeared. Cheng Henfeng stared at Lu Tianyi, and the long sword on his back started to hum even louder. He gritted his teeth. "Master." Lu Tianyi glanced at him. "All the books you've studied for so many years have gone to waste. How could it be? How could it be?" Huang Liang looked incredulous. He looked at the great formation of the gully, which covered an area of dozens of miles. He looked at the blood and floating corpses in the gully. Even though he had seen many storms, he couldn't help but be shocked. Then came endless anger. No wonder the snow province was empty all the way here. No wonder there were so few people. It turned out that the Heaven Canyon sect had done such a disgraceful thing. The blood in the great formation of the gully was like a river. It was formed by the gathering of thousands of lives. He finally understood why the blood in the north had soared into the sky and the wailing of vengeful spirits in his divination. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have dared to imagine such a hell on earth. It was exactly what he had seen in his divination. The Heaven Canyon sect was an evil sect, and there were all kinds of people in it. However, he had never thought that the Heaven Canyon sect would dare to do such a thing. The living beings of an entire continent. You deserve to die. Huang Liang had long passed the age of being hot-blooded and competitive. However, at this moment, he couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. Fortunately, he wasn't blinded by anger. Instead, he spread the news of this place immediately. The news that Zhuang Bufan had sent earlier was still circulating, so it didn't cause too much of a stir. Although the 3 overlord sects had received the news and were sending people to the Snow Province to investigate, how could the effect be compared to the news that Huang Liang had sent personally? It was foreseeable that it wouldn't be long before the 3 overlord sects came out in full force and rushed to the Snow Province. Not only that, but all the cultivators in the Soaring Dragon realm would also be mobilized. At that time, the Heaven Canyon sect would definitely become the enemy of the whole world. To be continued, that you're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.